The Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, a facsimile of the original edition of 1888, printed by the Cunningham Press, Alhambra, California. Volume 1, Cosmogenesis. Part 1, Cosmic Evolution, 7 stanzas translated with commentaries from the Secret Book of John.
Stanza 3. 1. The last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills throughout infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within without, like the bud of the lotus. 2. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in the darkness that breathes over the slumbering waters of life. 3. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill, which condenses into the world egg. 4. Then the 3 fall into the 4. The radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. The luminous egg, which in itself is 3, curls and spreads in milk-white curds throughout the depths of mother, the root that grows in the depths of the ocean of life. 5. The root remains, the light remains, the curds remain, and still Oaho is one. 6. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, of father and mother. 7. Behold, O Lanu, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled refulgent glory, bright space, son of dark space, which emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is Oaho the younger, the secret left out. He shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The one is 4, and 4 takes to itself 3, and the union produces the Sapta, in whom are the 7 which become the Tridasa, or the hosts, and the multitudes. Behold him lifting the veil and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above, and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones, and turns the upper into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested into the great waters. 8. Where was the germ, and where was now darkness? Where is the spirit of the flame that burns in thy lamp, O Lanu? The germ is that, and that is light, the white brilliant sun of the dark hidden Father. 9. Light is cold flame, and flame is fire, and fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the Great Mother. 10. Father Mother spin a web whose upper end is fastened to spirit, the light of the one darkness, and the lower one to its shadowy end, matter, and this web is the universe spun out of the 2 substances made in one, which is Svabhavat. 11. It expands when the breath of fire is upon it. It contracts when the breath of the mother touches it. Then the sons dissociate and scatter, to return into their mother's bosom at the end of the great day, and re-become one with her. When it is cooling, it becomes radiant, and the sons expand and contract through their own selves and hearts. They embrace infinitude. 12. Then Svabhavat sends Fohat to harden the atoms. Each is a part of the web, reflecting the self-existent Lord, like a mirror. Each becomes in turn a world. In the English translation from the Sanskrit, the numbers are given in that language, eka, chatur, etc., etc. It was thought best to give them in English. End of note. Commentary 1. The last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude. The seemingly paradoxical use of the sentence seventh eternity, thus dividing the indivisible, is sanctified in esoteric philosophy. The latter divides boundless duration into unconditional eternal and universal time and a conditioned one, khandakala. One is the abstraction or noumenon of infinite time, kala. The other its phenomenon appearing periodically as the effect of mahat, the universal intelligence limited by manvanteric duration. With some schools, mahat is the firstborn of pradhana, undifferentiated substance, or the periodical aspect of mula prakriti, the root of nature, which, pradhana, is called maya, the illusion. In this respect, I believe esoteric teaching differs from the Vedantin doctrines of both the Advaita and the Vishishtadvaita schools. For it says that while mula prakriti, the noumenon, is self-existing and without any origin, is, in short, parentless, anupadaka, as one with the Brahman, prakriti, its phenomenon, is periodical and no better than a phantasm of the former. So mahat, with the occultists, the firstborn of gnana, or gnosis, knowledge, wisdom of the logos, is a phantasm reflected from the absolute nirguna, parabrahm, the one reality, devoid of attributes and qualities. See Upanishads. While with some Vedantins, mahat is a manifestation of prakriti, or matter. Therefore, the last vibration of the seventh eternity was foreordained, by no god in particular, but occurred in virtue of the eternal and changeless law which causes the great periods of activity and rest, called so graphically and at the same time so poetically, the days and nights of Brahma. The expansion from within without of the mother, called elsewhere the waters of space, universal matrix, etc., does not allude to an expansion from a small center of focus, but without reference to size or limitation or area, means the development of limitless subjectivity into as limitless objectivity, the ever, to us, invisible and immaterial substance present in eternity through its periodical shadow from its own plane into the lap of Maya. It implies that this expansion, not being an increase in size, for infinite extension admits of no enlargement, was a change of condition. It expanded like the bud of the lotus, for the lotus plant exists not only as a miniature embryo in its seed, a physical characteristic, but its prototype is present in an ideal form in the astral light from dawn to night, during the manvanteric period, like everything else, as a matter of fact, in this objective universe, from man down to mite, from giant trees down to the tiniest blades of grass. All this, teaches the hidden science, is but the temporary reflection, the shadow of the eternal ideal prototype in divine thought. The word eternal, note well again, standing here only in the sense of aeon, as lasting throughout the seemingly interminable but still limited cycle of activity, called by us Manvantara. For what is the real esoteric meaning of Manvantara, or rather a Manuantara? It means esoterically between two Manus, of whom there are 14 in every day of Brahma. Such a day consisting of 1,000 aggregates of 4 ages, or 1,000 great ages, Mahayugas. Let us now analyze the word or name Manu. Orientalists and their dictionaries tell us that the term Manu is from the root man, to think, hence the thinking man. But esoterically, every Manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of his special cycle or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine, as the Hermetic Pimander. each of the Manus, therefore, the creator and fashioner of all that appears during his own respective cycle of being or Manvantara. Fohat runs the Manus or Jiankochan's errands, and causes the ideal prototypes to expand from within without, meaning to cross gradually on a descending scale all the planes from the noumenon to the lowest phenomenon, to bloom finally on the last into full objectivity, the acme of illusion, or the grossest matter. Stanza 3 continued. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing, simultaneously, the whole universe, and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes, moves, over the slumbering waters of life. The Pythagorean monad is also said to dwell in solitude and darkness like the germ. The idea of the breath of darkness moving over the slumbering waters of life, which is primordial matter with the latent spirit in it, recalls the first chapter of Genesis. Its original is the Brahminical Narayana, the mover on the waters, who is the personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious all, or Parabrahm, of the Eastern occultists. The waters of life, or chaos, the female principle in symbolism, are the vacuum, to our mental sight, in which lie the latent spirit and matter. This it was that made Democritus assert, after his instructor Leucippus, that the primordial principles of all were atoms and a vacuum, in the sense of space, but not of empty space as nature abhors a vacuum, according to the Peripatetics and every ancient philosopher. In all cosmogonies, water plays the same important part. It is the base and source of material existence. Scientists, mistaking the word for the thing, understood by water the definite chemical combination of oxygen and hydrogen, thus giving a specific meaning to a term used by occultists in a generic sense, and which is used in cosmogony with a metaphysical and mystical meaning. Ice is not water, neither is steam, although all three have precisely the same chemical composition. Stanza 3 continued. 2. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill, and drop the non-eternal periodical germ, which condenses into the world egg. The solitary ray dropping into the mother deep may be taken as meaning divine thought or intelligence, impregnating chaos. This, however, occurs on the plane of metaphysical abstraction, or rather the plane whereon that which we call a metaphysical abstraction is a reality. The virgin egg being in one sense abstract eggness, or the power of becoming developed through fecundation, is eternal and forever the same. And just as the fecundation of an egg takes place before it is dropped, so the non-eternal periodical germ, which becomes later in symbolism the mundane egg, contains in itself, when it emerges from the said symbol, the promise and potency of all the universe. Though the idea per se is, of course, an abstraction, a symbolical mode of expression, it is a symbol truly, as it suggests the idea of infinity as an endless circle. It brings before the mind's eye the picture of cosmos emerging from and in boundless space, a universe as shoreless in magnitude, if not as endless in its objective manifestation. The simile of an egg also expresses the fact taught in occultism that the primordial form of everything manifested, from atom to globe, from man to angel, is spheroidal, the sphere having been with all nations the emblem of eternity and infinity, a serpent swallowing its tail. To realize the meaning, however, the sphere must be thought of as seen from its center. The field of vision, or of thought, is like a sphere whose radii proceed from oneself in every direction and extend out into space, opening up boundless vistas all round.
It is the symbolical circle of Pascal and the Kabbalists, whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere, a conception which enters into the compound idea of this emblem. The mundane egg is, perhaps, one of the most universally adopted symbols, highly suggestive as it is, equally in the spiritual, physiological, and cosmological sense. Therefore it is found in every world theogony, where it is largely associated with the serpent symbol, the latter being everywhere, in philosophy as in religious symbolism, an emblem of eternity, infinitude, regeneration, and rejuvenation, as well as of wisdom. See Part 2, Tree and Serpent and Crocodile Worship. The mystery of apparent self-generation and evolution through its own creative power, repeating in miniature the process of cosmic evolution in the egg, both being due to heat and moisture under the efflux of the unseen creative spirit, justified fully the selection of this graphic symbol. The virgin egg is the microcosmic symbol of the macrocosmic prototype, the Virgin Mother, Chaos, or the primeval deep. The male creator, under whatever name, springs forth from the virgin female, the immaculate root fructified by the ray, who, if versed in astronomy and natural sciences, can fail to see its suggestiveness. Cosmos, as receptive nature, is an egg fructified, yet left immaculate. Once regarded as boundless, it could have no other representation than a spheroid. The golden egg was surrounded by 7 natural elements: ether, fire, air, water, 4 ready, 3 secret. It may be found stated in Vishnu Purana, where elements are translated envelopes, and a secret one is added, ahamkara. See Wilson's Vishnu Purana, Book 1, page 40. The original text has no ahamkara. It mentions 7 elements without specifying the last 3. See Part 2 on the mundane egg. Stanza 3 continued. 4. Then the 3, triangle, fell into the 4, quaternary. The radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside. The use of geometrical figures and the frequent allusions to figures in all ancient scriptures, see Puranas, Egyptian papyri, the Book of the Dead, and even the Bible, must be explained. In the Book of John, as in the Kabbalah, there are 2 kinds of numerals to be studied: the figures, often simple blinds, and the sacred numbers, the values of which are all known to the occultists through initiation. The form is but a conventional glyph. The latter is the basic symbol of all. That is to say, that one is purely physical, the other purely metaphysical, the 2 standing in relation to each other as matter stands to spirit, the extreme poles of the one substance. As Balzac, the unconscious occultist of French literature, says somewhere, the number is to mind the same as it is to matter, an incomprehensible agent, and perhaps so to the profane, but never to the initiated mind. Number is, as the great writer thought, an entity, and at the same time a breath emanating from what he called God, and what we call the All, the breath which alone could organize the physical cosmos, where naught obtains its form but through the deity, which is an effect of number. It is instructive to quote Balzac's words upon this subject. Quote, "The smallest as the most immense creations, are they not to be distinguished from each other by their quantities, their qualities, their dimensions, their forces and attributes, all begotten by the number? The infinitude of the numbers is a fact proven to our mind, but of which no proof can be physically given. The mathematician will tell us that the infinitude of the numbers exists, but it's not to be demonstrated. God is a number endowed with motion, which is felt but not demonstrated. As unity it begins the numbers, with which it has nothing in common. The existence of number depends on unity, which, without a single number, begets them all. What, unable either to measure the first abstraction yielded to you by the deity, or to get hold of it, you still hope to subject to your measurements the mystery of the secret sciences which emanate from that deity. And what would you feel were I to plunge you into the abyss of motion, the force which organizes the number? What would you think were I to add that motion and number are begotten by the Word, the supreme reason of the seers and prophets who, in days of old, sensed the mighty breath of God, a witness to which is the Apocalypse?" Unquote. Note on motion and number. Number truly, but never motion. It is motion which begets the Logos, the Word in occultism. End of note. The luminous egg, Hiranyagarbha, which in itself is three, the triple hypostasis of Brahma or Vishnu, the three Avashtas, curdles and spreads in milk-white curds throughout the depths of Mother, the root that grows in the ocean of life. The radiant essence curdled and spread throughout the depths of space. From an astronomical point of view, this is easy of explanation. It is the Milky Way, the world stuff, or primordial matter in its first form. It is more difficult, however, to explain it in a few words or even lines from the standpoint of occult science and symbolism, as it is the most complicated of glyphs. Herein are enshrined more than a dozen symbols. To begin with, the whole pantheon of mysterious objects, every one of them having some definite occult meaning, extracted from the allegorical churning of the ocean by the Hindu gods. Note on the whole pantheon of mysterious objects. The 14 precious things. The narrative or allegory is found in the Satapatha Brahmana and others. The Japanese secret science of the Buddhist mystics, the Yamabushi, has 7 precious things. We will speak of them hereafter. End of note. Besides Amrita, the water of life or immortality, Surabhi, the cow plenty, called the fountain of milk and curds, was extracted from this sea of milk. Hence the universal adoration of the cow and bull, one the productive, the other the generative power in nature, symbols connected with both the solar and the cosmic deities. The specific properties for occult purposes of the 14 precious things, being explained only at the 4th initiation, cannot be given here, but the following may be remarked. In the Satapatha Brahmana, it is stated that the churning of the ocean of milk took place in the Satyayug, the first age, which immediately followed the, quote, deluge, unquote. As, however, neither the Rig Veda, both preceding Vaivasvata's, quote, deluge, unquote, that of the bulk of the 4th race, mention this deluge. It is evident that it is not the great deluge, nor that which carried away Atlantis, nor even the deluge of Noah which is meant here. This churning relates to a period before the earth's formation, and is in direct connection with that other universal legend, the various and contradictory versions of which culminated in the Christian dogma of the war in heaven and the fall of the angels. See Book 2, also Revelations, Chapter 12. The Brahmanas, reproached by the Orientalists with their versions on the same subjects, often clashing with each, are preeminently occult works, hence used purposely as blinds. They were allowed to survive for public use and property only because they were and are absolutely unintelligible to the masses. Otherwise, they would have disappeared from circulation as long ago as the days of Akbar. Stanza 3 continued. The root remains, the light remains, the curds remain, and still Oaho is one. Oaho is rendered father-mother of the gods in the commentaries, or the 6 in 1, or the septenary root from which all proceeds. All depends upon the accent given to these 7 vowels, which may be pronounced as 1, 3, or even 7 syllables by adding an E after the letter O. This mystic name is given out, because without a thorough mastery of the triple pronunciation, it remains forever ineffectual. That Oaho is one refers to the non-separatedness of all that lives and has its whether in active or passive state. In one sense, Oaho is the rootless root of all, hence one with Parabrahma. In another sense, it is a name for the manifested one life, the eternal living unity. The root means, as already explained, pure knowledge, sattva, eternal, nitya, unconditioned reality or sat, satya, whether we call it Parabrahmam or Mula Prakriti, for these are the two aspects of the one. Note: the original for understanding is sattva, which Shankara Acharya renders antahkarana, refined, he says, by sacrifices and other sanctifying operations. In the Kata, at page 148, sattva is said by Sankara to mean buddhi, a common use of the word. The Bhagavad Gita and the Sanatsugatya and the Anugita, translated by Kashinat Trimbak Telang, edited by Max Müller. Whatever meaning various schools may give the term, sattva is the name given among occult students of the Arya Sangha school to the dual monad or Atma Buddhi. The Atma Buddhi on this plane corresponds to Parabrahm and Muna Prakriti on the higher plane. End of note. The light is the same omnipresent spiritual ray which has entered and now fecundated the divine egg and caused cosmic matter to begin its long series of differentiations. The curds are the first differentiation, and probably refer also to that cosmic matter which is supposed to be the origin of the Milky Way, the matter we know. This matter, which, according to the revelation received from the primeval Dhyani Buddhas, is, during the periodical sleep of the universe, of the ultimate tenuity conceivable to the eye of the perfect Bodhisattva. This matter, radical and cool, becomes, at the first reawakening of cosmic motion, scattered through space, appearing, when seen from the earth, in clusters and lumps, like curds in thin milk. These are the seeds of the future worlds, the star stuff. Stanza 3 continued. 6. The root of life was in every drop of the ocean of immortality, Amrita, and the ocean was radiant light, which was fire and heat and motion. Darkness vanished and was no more. It disappeared in its own essence, the body of fire and water, of father and mother. Notes on Amrita. Amrita is immortality. Notes on darkness vanished and was no more. See commentary number 1 to this stanza. End of notes. The essence of darkness being absolute light, darkness is taken as the appropriate allegorical representation of the condition of the universe during pralaya, or the term of absolute rest or non-being, as it appears to our finite minds. The fire, heat, and motion here spoken of are, of course, not the fire, heat, and motion of physical science, but the underlying abstractions, the noumena, or the soul of the essence of these material manifestations, the things in themselves, which, as modern science confesses, entirely elude the instruments of the laboratory, and which even the mind cannot grasp, although it can equally little avoid the conclusion that these underlying essences of things must exist. Fire and water, or father and mother, may be taken here to mean the divine ray and chaos. Note, see Quan Shayin. The real name from the text cannot be given. End of note. Chaos, from this union with spirit obtaining sense shown with pleasure, and thus was produced the protogonos, the firstborn light, says a fragment of Hermas. Damascus calls it Dis, in Theogony, the disposer of all things. See Chorus Ancient Fragments, page 314. According to the Rosicrucian tenets, as handled and explained by the profane for once correctly, if only partially, so light and darkness are identical in themselves, being only divisible in the human mind. And according to Robert Flood, darkness adopted illumination in order to make itself visible on Rosenkranz. According to the tenets of Eastern occultism, darkness is the one true actuality, the basis and the root of light, without which the latter could never manifest itself, nor even exist. Light is matter and darkness pure spirit. Darkness, in its radical metaphysical basis, is subjective and absolute light, while the latter, in all its seeming effulgence and glory, is merely a mass of shadows, as it can never be eternal, and is simply an illusion, or Maya. Even in the mind-baffling and science-harassing Genesis, light is created out of darkness. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. Chapters 1 verse 2. And not vice versa. In him, in darkness, was life, and the life was the light of men. John 1:4. A day may come when the eyes of men will be opened, and then they may comprehend better than they do now that verse in the Gospel of John that says, "And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not." They will see then that the word darkness does not apply to man's spiritual eyesight, but indeed to darkness, the absolute, that comprehendeth not, cannot cognize, transient light, however transcendent to human eyes. Demon est Deus inversus. The devil is now called darkness by the church, whereas in the Bible he is called the Son of God. See Job. The bright star of the early morning, Lucifer. See Isaiah. There is a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft in the reason why the first archangel, who sprang from the depths of chaos, was called Lux, Lucifer, the luminous son of the morning, or manvanteric dawn. He was transformed by the church into Lucifer or Satan because he is higher and older than Jehovah, and had to be sacrificed to the new dogma. See Book 2. Stanza 3 continued. 7. Behold, O Lanu, the radiant child of the two, the unparalleled refulgent glory, bright space, son of dark space, who emerges from the depths of the great dark waters. It is Oaho, the younger, the secret left out, whom thou knowest now as Quan Shayin. Comment. Note. Lanu is a student, a chela who studies practical esotericism. End of note. Bright space, son of dark space, corresponds to the ray dropped at the first thrill of the new dawn into the great cosmic depths, from which it re-emerges differentiated as Oaho the younger, the new life, to become, to the end of the life cycle, the germ of all things. He is the incorporeal man who contains in himself the divine idea, the generator of light and life, to use an expression of Philo Judaeus. He is called the blazing dragon of wisdom, because firstly, he is that which the Greek philosophers called the logos, the verbum of the thought divine, and secondly, because in esoteric philosophy, this first manifestation being the synthesis of the aggregate of universal wisdom, Oaho, the son of the sun, contains in himself the seven creative hosts, the Sephiroth, and is thus the essence of manifested wisdom. He who bathes in the light of Oaho will never be deceived by the veil of Maya. Quan Shayin is identical with and an equivalent of the Sanskrit Avalokiteshvara, and as such he is an androgynous deity, like the Tetragrammaton and all the logoi of antiquity. Note. Hence all the higher gods of antiquity are all sons of the mother before they become those of the father. The logoi, the Jupiter or Zeus, son of Kronos, Saturn, infinite time or Kala, in their origin were represented as male-female. Zeus, or in English Zeus, is said to be the beautiful virgin, and Venus is made bearded. Apollo is originally bisexual. So is Brahmavak in Manu and the Puranas. Osiris is interchangeable with Isis, and Horus is of both sexes. Finally, St. John's vision in Revelation, that of the Logos, who is now connected with Jesus, is hermaphrodite, for he is described as having female breasts. So is the Tetragrammaton, equals Jehovah. But there are two Avalokiteshvaras in esotericism, the first and the second Logos. End of note. It is only by some sects in China that he is anthropomorphized and represented with female attributes, when, under his female aspect, he becomes Quan Yin, the goddess of mercy, called the divine voice. Notes on female attributes. No religious symbol can escape profanation and even derision in our days of politics and science. In southern India, the writer has seen a converted native making puja with offerings before a statue of Jesus, clad in a woman's clothes and with a ring in his nose. When asking the meaning of the masquerade, we were answered that it was Jesu Maria, blended in one, and that it was done by the permission of the party, as the seal's convert had no money to purchase two statues or idols, as they very properly were called by a witness, another but a non-converted Hindu. Blasphemous this will appear to a dogmatic Christian, but the theosophist and the occultist must award the palm of logic to the converted Hindu. The esoteric Christos in the Gnosis is, of course, sexless, but in exoteric theology he is male and female. End of note. Notes on the divine voice. The Gnostic Sophia, wisdom, who is the mother of Ogdoad, Aditi in a certain sense, with her 8 sons, is the Holy Ghost and the creator of all, as in the ancient systems. The Father is a far later invention. The earliest manifested Logos was female everywhere, the mother of the 7 planetary powers. End of note. The latter is the patron deity of Tibet and of the island of Puto in China, where both deities have a number of monasteries. See Part 2, Quanchayin and Quanyin. Note. See Chinese Buddhism by the Reverend J.C. Edkins, who always gives correct facts, although his conclusions are very frequently erroneous. He shines forth as the sun. He is the blazing divine dragon of wisdom. The Eka is Chatur, 4, and Chatur takes it to itself 3, and the union produces the Sapta, 7, in whom are the 7 which become the Tridasa, the thrice 10, the hosts and the multitudes. Note. Tridasa, or 3 times 10, 30, alludes to the Vedic deities in round numbers, or more accurately 33, a sacred number. They are the 12 Adityas, the 8 Vashus, the 11 Rudras, and 2 Ashwins, the twin sons of the sun and the sky. This is the root number of the Hindu pantheon, which enumerates 33 crores, or over 300 millions of gods and goddesses. End of note. The dragon of wisdom is the one, the Ika, Sanskrit, or Saka. It is curious that Jehovah's name in Hebrew should also be one, Echod. His name is Echod, say the rabbins. The philologists ought to decide which of the two is derived from the other, linguistically and symbolically. Surely not the Sanskrit. The one and the dragon are expressions used by the ancients in connection with their respective logoi. Jehovah, esoterically, as Elohim, is also the serpent or dragon that tempted Eve, and the dragon is an old glyph for astral light, primordial principle, which is the wisdom of chaos. Archaic philosophy, recognizing neither good nor evil as a fundamental or independent power, but starting from the absolute all, universal perfection eternally, traced both through the course of natural evolution to pure light condensing gradually into form, hence becoming matter or evil. It was left with the early and ignorant Christian fathers to degrade the philosophical and highly scientific idea of this emblem, the dragon, into the absurd superstition called the devil. They took it from the later Zoroastrians, who saw devils or the evil in the Hindu devas, and the word evil thus became, by a double transmutation, devil in every tongue, diabolos, diable, diavolo, teufel. But the pagans have always shown a philosophical discrimination in their symbols. The primitive symbol of the serpent symbolized divine wisdom and perfection, and had always stood for psychical regeneration and immortality. Hence Hermes calling the serpent the most spiritual of all beings. Moses initiated in the wisdom of Hermes, following suit in Genesis. The Gnostics' serpent, with the 7 vowels over its head, being the emblem of the 7 hierarchies of the septenary or planetary creators. Hence, also, the Hindu serpent, Sesha or Ananta, the infinite, a name of Vishnu, whose first vakan, or vehicle, on the primordial waters is this serpent. Note: like the logoi and the hierarchies of power, however, the serpents have to be distinguished one from the other. Sesha, or Ananta, the couch of Vishnu, is an allegorical abstraction, symbolizing infinite time in space, which contains the germ and throws off periodically the efflorescence of this germ, the manifested universe. Whereas the Gnostic Office contained the same triple symbolism in its 7 vowels as the 1, 3, and 7-syllabled Oaho of the archaic doctrine, that is, the one unmanifested logos, the second manifested, the triangle concreting into the quaternary or tetragrammaton, and the rays of the latter on the material plane. End of note. Yet they all made a difference between the good and the bad serpent, the astral light of the Kabbalists, between the former, the embodiment of divine wisdom in the region of the spiritual, and the latter evil on the plane of matter. Note: the astral light, or the ether, of the ancient pagans, for the name of astral light is quite modern, is spirit matter. Beginning with the pure spiritual plane, it becomes grosser as it descends until it becomes the Maya, or the tempting and deceitful serpent on our plane. End of note. Jesus accepted the serpent as a synonym of wisdom, and this formed part of his teaching. Be ye wise as serpents, he says. In the beginning, before mother became father-mother, the fiery dragon moved in the infinitudes alone. Book of Sarpayani. The Aitareya Brahmana calls the earth Sarparayini, the serpent queen, and the mother of all that moves. Before our globe became egg-shaped, and the universe also, a long trail of cosmic dust, or fire mist, moved and withered like a serpent in space. The Spirit of God moving on chaos was symbolized by every nation in the shape of a fiery serpent, breathing fire and light upon the primordial waters until it had incubated cosmic matter and made it assume the annular shape of a serpent, with its tail in its mouth, which symbolizes not only eternity and infinitude, but also the globular shape of all the bodies formed within the universe from that fiery mist. The universe, as well as the earth and man, cast off periodically, serpent-like, their old skins, to assume new ones after a time of rest. The serpent is surely a not less graceful or a more unpoetical image than the caterpillar and chrysalis from which springs the butterfly, the Greek emblem of Psyche, the human soul. The dragon was also the symbol of the Logos with the Egyptians, as with the Gnostics. In the Book of Hermes, Pimander, the oldest and the most spiritual of the Logoi of the Western continent, appears to Hermes in the shape of a fiery dragon of light, fire, and flame. Pimander, the thought divine personified, says, "The light is me. I am the Nous," the mind of Manu. "I am thy God, and I am far older than the human principle which escapes from the shadow, darkness, or the concealed deity. I am the germ of thought, the resplendent word, the Son of God. All that thus sees and hears in thee is the verbum of the Master. It is the thought, Mahat, which is God the Father." Note: by God the Father, the seventh principle in man and cosmos are here unmistakably meant, this principle being inseparable in its esse and nature from the seventh cosmic principle. In one sense, it is the Logos of the Greeks and the Avalokiteshvara of the esoteric Buddhists. End of note. The celestial ocean, the aether, is the breath of the Father, the life-giving principle, the Mother, the Holy Spirit, for these are not separated, and their union is life. Here we find the unmistakable echo of the archaic secret doctrine, as now expounded. Only the latter does not place at the head and evolution of life the Father, who comes third, and is the Son of the Mother, but the eternal and ceaseless breath of the All. The Mahat, understanding, universal mind, thought, etc., before it manifests itself as Brahma or Shiva, appears as Vishnu, says Sankhya-shara, page 16. Hence Mahat has several aspects, just as the Logos has. Mahat is called the Lord in the primary creation and is, in this sense, universal cognition or thought divine. But that Mahat which was first produced is afterwards called egoism, when it is born as I. That is said to be the second creation, Anugita, chapter 26. And the translator, an able and learned Brahmin, not a European Orientalist, explains in a footnote 6. That is, when Mahat develops into the feeling of self-consciousness, I, then it assumes the name of egoism, which, translated in our esoteric phraseology, means when Mahat is transformed into the human manas, or even that of the finite gods, and becomes ahamship. Why it is called the Mahat of the second creation, or the ninth, that of the Kumara in Vishnu Purana, will be explained in Book 2. The sea of fire is then the super-astral, that is, numinal, light, the first radiation from the root, the Mula Prakriti, the undifferentiated cosmic substance, which becomes astral matter. It is also called the fiery serpent, as above described. If the student bears in mind that there is but one universal element, which is infinite, unborn, and undying, and that all the rest, as in the world of phenomena, are but so many various differentiated aspects and transformations, correlations they are now called, of that one, from cosmical down to microcosmical effects, from superhuman down to human and subhuman beings, the totality, in short, of objective existence, then the first and chief difficulty will disappear, and occult cosmology may be mastered. Note: in the Egyptian, as in the Indian theogony, there was a concealed deity, the One and the creative androgynous God. Thus Shu is the god of creation, and Osiris is, in his original primary form, the god whose name is unknown. See Maretz, Abydos, Book 2, page 63, and Volume 3, pages 413, 414, number 1122, end of note. All the Kabbalists and occultists, Eastern and Western, recognize A. the identity of Father-Mother with primordial aether, or Akasha, astral light, and B. its homogeneity before the evolution of the Sun, cosmically Fohat, for it is cosmic electricity. Fohat hardens and scatters the seven brothers, Book 3, Jan, which means that the primordial electric entity, for the Eastern occultists insist that electricity is an entity, electrifies into life and separates primordial stuff or pre-genetic matter into atoms, themselves the source of all life and consciousness. There exists an universal agent, unique of all forms and of life, that is called Od, Ob, and Aur, active and passive, positive and negative, like day and night. It is the first light in creation. See Eliphas Levi's Kabbalah. The first light of the primordial Elohim, the Adam, male and female, or scientifically electricity and life. Notes: Od is the pure life-giving light of magnetic fluid. Ob, the messenger of death, used by the sorcerers, the nefarious evil fluid. Aur is the synthesis of the two, astral light proper. Can the philologist tell why Od, a term used by Reichenbach to denominate the vital fluid, is also a Tibetan word meaning light, brightness, radiancy? It equally means sky in an occult sense, whence the root of the word. But Akasha is not quite ether, but far higher than that, as will be shown. End of notes. Behold him lifting the veil, and unfurling it from east to west. He shuts out the above and leaves the below to be seen as the great illusion. He marks the places for the shining ones, stars, and turns the upper space into a shoreless sea of fire, and the one manifested element into the great waters. The ancients represented it by a serpent, for Forhat hisses as he glides hither and thither in zigzags. The Kabbalah figures it with the Hebrew letter Tet, whose symbol is the serpent which played such a prominent part in the mysteries. Its universal value is 9, for it is the 9th letter of the alphabet and the 9th door of the 50 portals or gateways that lead to the concealed mysteries of being. It is the magical agent par excellence, and designates the Hermetic philosophy life infused into primordial matter, the essence that composes all things, and the spirit that determines their form. But there are 2 secret Hermetical operations, one spiritual, the other material correlative, and forever united. Thou shalt separate the earth from the fire, the subtile from the solid, that which ascends from earth to heaven and descends again from heaven to earth. It, the subtile light, is the strong force of every force, for it conquers every subtile thing and penetrates into every solid. Thus was the world formed. Hermes. It was not Zeno alone, the founder of the Stoics, who taught that the universe evolves when its primary substance is transformed from the state of fire into that of air, then into water, etc. Heraclitus of Ephesus manifested that the one principle that underlies all phenomena in nature is fire. The intelligence that moves the universe is fire, and fire is intelligence. Anaximenes said the same of air, and Thales of Miletus, 600 years before Christ, of water. The esoteric doctrine reconciles all those philosophers by showing that, though each was right, the system of none was complete. Stanza 3 continued. 8. Where was the germ, and where was now darkness? Where is the spirit of the flame that burns in thy lamp, O Lanu? The germ is that, and that is light, the white brilliant sun of the dark hidden Father. The answer to the first question suggested by the second, which is the reply of the teacher to the pupil, contains in a single phrase one of the most essential truths of occult philosophy. It indicates the existence of things imperceptible to our physical senses, which are of far greater importance, more real and more permanent than those that appeal to these senses themselves. Before the Lanu can hope to understand the transcendental and metaphysical problem contained in the first question, he must be able to answer the second, while the very answer he gives to the second will furnish him with a clue to the correct reply to the first. In the Sanskrit commentary on this stanza, the terms used for the concealed and the unrevealed principle are many. In the earliest manuscripts of Indian literature, this unrevealed abstract deity has no name. It is called generally that, tad in Sanskrit, and means all that is, was, and will be, or that can be so received by the human mind. Among such appellations given, of course, only in esoteric philosophy, as the unfathomable darkness, the whirlwind, etc., it is also called the it of the Kalahansa, the Kalahamsa, and even the Kali Hamsa, black swan. Here the M and the N are convertible, and both sound like the nasal French ang, or again N or en, ennui, embarras, etc. As in the Hebrew Bible, many a mysterious sacred name in Sanskrit conveys to the profane ear no more than some ordinary and often vulgar word, because it is concealed anamagmatically or otherwise. This word of Hansa, or esoterically Hamsa, is just such a case. Hamsa is equal to a Hamsa, 3 words meaning I am he in English, while divided in still another way it will read Soham, he is I, Soham being equal to Sah, he, and Aham, I, or I am he. In this alone is contained the universal mystery, the doctrine of the identity of man's essence with God-essence for him who understands the language of wisdom. Hence the glyph of and the allegory about Kalahansa or Hamsa, and the name given to Brahma neuter later on through the male Brahma of Hangsa Vahanga, he who uses the Hangsa as his vehicle. The same word may be read Kalahangsa or I am I in the eternity of time, answering to the biblical or rather Zoroastrian I am that I am. The same doctrine is found in the Kabbalah, as witness the following extract from an unpublished manuscript by Mr. S. Liddell MacGregor Mathers, the learned Kabbalist. The three pronouns hua, at, ani, he, tui, I are used to symbolize the ideas of macroprosopos and microprosopos in the Hebrew Kabbalah. Hua, he, is applied to the hidden and concealed macroprosopos, ata, thou, to microprosopos, and ani, I, to the latter, when he is represented as speaking. See Lesser Holy Assembly 204 et sequens. It is to be noted that each of these names consists of three letters, of which the letter Aleph, A, forms the conclusion of the first word Hoa and the commencement of Ata and Ani, as if it were the connecting link between them. But Aleph is the symbol of the unity and consequently of the unvarying idea of the divine operating through all these. But behind the Aleph, in the name Hoa, are the letters Ata and Ani, the symbols of the numbers 6 and 5, the male and the female, the hexagram and the pentagram. And the numbers of these three words, Hoa, Ati, Ani, are 12, 406, and 61, which are resumed in the key numbers of 3, 10, and 7 by the Kabbalah of the 9 chambers, which is a form of the exegetical rule of Temura. It is useless to attempt to explain the mystery in full. Materialists and the men of modern science will never understand its sense. In order to obtain clear perception of it, one has first of all to admit the postulate of a universally diffused, omnipresent, eternal deity in nature. Secondly, to have fathomed the mystery of electricity in its true essence. And thirdly, to credit man with being the septenary symbol on the terrestrial plane of the one great unit, the Logos, which is itself the 7-voweled sign, the breath crystallized into the Word. Note: this is again similar to the doctrine of Fichte and German pantheists. The former reveres Jesus as a great teacher who inculcated the unity of the spirit of man with the God spirit, the Advaita doctrine, or universal principle. It is difficult to find a single speculation in Western metaphysics which has not been anticipated by archaic Eastern philosophy. From Kant to Herbert Spencer, it is all a more or less distorted echo of Advaita, and Vedantic doctrines generally. End of note. He who believes in all this has also to believe in the multiple combination of the 7 planets of occultism and of the Kabbalah, with the 12 zodiacal signs, to attribute, as we do, to each planet and to each constellation an influence which, in the words of Eli Starr, a French occultist, is proper to it, beneficent or maleficent, and this after the planetary spirit which rules it, who, in his turn, is capable of influencing men and things which are found in harmony with him and with which he has any affinity. For these reasons, and since few believe in the foregoing, all that can now be given is that in both cases the symbol of Hansa, whether I, he, goose, or swan, is an important symbol representing, for instance, divine wisdom, wisdom in darkness beyond the reach of man. For all exoteric purposes, Hansa, as every Hindu knows, is a fabulous bird which, when given milk mixed with water for its food, in the allegory, separated the two, drinking the milk and leaving the water, thus showing inherent wisdom, milk standing symbolically for spirit and water for matter. That this allegory is very ancient and dates from the very earliest archaic period is shown by the mention in Bhagavata Purana of a certain caste named Hamza or Hansa, which was the one caste par excellence. When, far back in the midst of a forgotten past, there was among the Hindus only one Veda, one deity, one caste. There is also a range in the Himalayas, described in the old books as being situated north of Mount Meru, called Hamza, and connected with episodes pertaining to the history of religious mysteries and initiations. As to the name of Kalahansa, being the supposed vehicle of Brahma Prajapati in the exoteric texts and translations of the Orientalists, it is quite a mistake. Brahma, the neuter, is called by them Kalahansa, and Brahma, the male, Hansa Vahana, because forsooth his vehicle or Vahan is a swan or goose. Vide the Hindu Classical Dictionary. This is a purely exoteric gloss. Esoterically and logically, if Brahma, the infinite, is all that is described by the Orientalists, namely, agreeably with the Vedantic texts, an abstract deity in no way characterized by the description of any human attributes, and it is still maintained that he or it is called Kalahansa, then how can it ever become the Vahan of Brahma, the manifested finite God? It is quite the reverse. The swan or goose, Hansa, is the symbol of that male or temporary deity, as he, the emanation of the primordial ray, is made to serve as a Vahan, or vehicle, for that divine ray, which otherwise could not manifest itself in the universe, being, antiphrastically, itself an emanation of darkness, for our human intellect at any rate. It is Brahma, then, who is Kalahansa, and the ray, the Hansa Vahana. As to the strange symbol chosen, it is equally suggestive, the true mystic significance being the idea of a universal matrix, figured by the primordial waters of the deep, or the opening for the reception, and subsequently for the issue of that one ray, the Logos, which contains in itself the other 7 procreative rays or powers, the Logoi or builders. Hence the choice by the Rose-Croix of the aquatic fowl, where the swan or pelican, with 7 young ones for a symbol modified and adapted to the religion of every country. Note: whether the genus of the bird be Cygnus, Anser, or Pelicanus, it is no matter, as it is an aquatic bird floating or moving on the waters like the spirit, and then issuing from those waters to give birth to other beings. The true significance of the symbol of the 18th degree of the Rose-Croix is precisely this, though poetized later on into the motherly feeling of the pelican rending its bosom to feed its 7 little ones with its blood. End of note. Ansaph is called the fiery soul of the pelican in the Book of Numbers. Note: the reason why Moses forbids eating the pelican and swan, classing the 2 among the unclean fowls, and permits eating bald locusts, beetles, and the grasshopper after his kind, Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, is a purely physiological one, and has to do with the mystic symbology only in so far as the word unclean, like every other word, ought not to be read and understood literally, as it is esoteric like all the rest, and may as well mean holy as not. It is a blind, very suggestive in connection with certain superstitions, for example that of the Russian people who will not use the pigeon for food, not because it is unclean, but because the Holy Ghost is credited with having appeared under the form of a dove. End of note. See Part 2, the hidden deity and symbols and glyphs. Appearing with every Manvantara as Narayan or Swayambhuva, the self-existent, and penetrating into the mundane egg, it emerged from it at the end of the divine incubation as Brahma, or Prajapati, a progenitor of the future universe into which he expands. He is Purusha, spirit, but he is also Prakriti, matter. Therefore, it is only after separating himself into 2 halves, Brahmavak, the female, and Brahmavirai, the male, that the Prajapati becomes the male Brahma.
Stanza 3 continued. 9. Light is cold flame, and flame is fire. And the fire produces heat, which yields water, the water of life in the Great Mother, chaos. It must be remembered that the words light, fire, and flame used in the stanzas have been adopted by the translators thereof from the vocabulary of the old five philosophers, in order to render better the meaning of the archaic terms and symbols employed in the original. Note, not the medieval alchemists,
but the magi and fire worshippers,
from whom the Rosicrucians, or the philosophers per ignem, the successors of the Theurgists, borrowed all their ideas concerning fire as a mystic and divine element. End of note. Otherwise they would have remained entirely unintelligible to a European reader, but to a student of the occult the terms used will be sufficiently clear.
All these, light, flame, hot, cold, fire, heat, or as a modern physicist would say, the correlations of electricity, mighty word and a still mightier symbol,
sacred generator of a no less sacred progeny, of fire, the creator, the preserver and the destroyer, of light, the essence of our divine ancestors, of flame, the soul of things, electricity, the one life at the upper rung of being, and astral fluid, the ethanol of the alchemists, at its lowest, God and devil, good and evil. Now, why is light called in the stanzas cold flame? Because in the order of cosmic evolution, as taught by the occultist, the energy that actuates matter after its first formation into atoms is generated on our plane by cosmic heat, and because cosmos, in the sense of dissociated matter, was not before that period. The first primordial matter, eternal and coeval with space, which has neither a beginning nor an end, is neither hot nor cold, but is of its own special nature, says the commentary, Book 2. Heat and cold are relative qualities, and pertain to the realms of the manifested worlds, which all proceed from the manifested hyle, which, in its absolutely latent aspect, is referred to as the cold virgin, and when awakened to life, as the mother. The ancient Western cosmogonic myths
state that at first there was but cold mist, which was the father, and the prolific slime, the mother, Ilus or Hyle, from which crept forth the mundane snake matter. See Isis, Volume 1, page 146.
Primordial matter, then, before it emerges from the plane of the never-manifesting, and awakens to the thrill of action under the impulse of Vorhat, is but a cool radiance, colorless, formless, tasteless, and devoid of every quality and aspect. Even such are her firstborn, the four sons, who are one and become seven, the entities by whose qualifications and names the ancient Eastern occultists call the four of the seven primal centers of forces, or atoms, that develop later into the great cosmic elements, now divided into the 70 or so sub-elements known to science. The four primal natures of the first Dryankochans are the so-called, for want of better terms, akashic, ethereal, watery, and fiery, answering in the terminology of practical occultism two scientific definitions of gases which, to convey a clear idea to both occultists and laymen, must be defined as parahydrogenic, paraoxygenic, oxyhydrogenic, and ozonic, or perhaps nitrosonic. The latter forces or gases, in occultism's supersensuous yet atomic substances, being the most effective and active when energizing on the plane of more grossly differentiated matter. Note, each of these and many more are probably the missing links of chemistry. They are known by other names in alchemy, and to the occultists who practice in phenomenal powers. It is by combining and recombining in a certain way, or dissociating, the elements by means of astral fire that the greatest phenomena are produced. End of note. Note the prefix para, Greek para, beyond, outside. End of note. These, in occultism supersenses, yet atomic substances, are both electropositive and electronegative. Stanza 3 continued. 10. Father Mother spin a web whose upper end is fastened to spirit, Purusha, the light of the one darkness, and the lower one to matter, Prakriti, its, the spirit's, shadowy end, and this web is the universe spun out of the two substances made in one, which is Svabhava. In the Mundaka Upanishad it is written, as a spider throws out and retracts its web, as herbs spring up in the ground, so is the universe derived from the undecaying one. 1.1.7. Brahma, as the germ of unknown darkness, is the material from which all evolves and develops, as the web from the spider, as foam from the water, etc. This is only graphic and true if Brahma, the creator, is, as a term, derived from the root bri, to increase or expand. Brahma expands and becomes the universe woven out of his own substance. The same idea has been beautifully expressed by Goethe, who says, thus at the roaring loom of time I ply, and weave for God the garment thou seest him by. Stanza 3 continued. 11. It, the web, expands when the breath of fire, the Father, is upon it. It contracts when the breath of the Mother, the root of matter, touches it. Then the sons, the elements with their respective powers or intelligences, dissociate and scatter to return into their mother's bosom at the end of the great day and become one with her. The expanding of the universe under the breath of fire is very suggestive in the light of the fire mist period of which modern science speaks so much and knows in reality so little. Great heat breaks up the compound elements and resolves the heavenly bodies into their primeval one element, explains the commentary. Once disintegrated into its primal constituent by getting within the attraction and reach of a focus or center of heat, energy, of which many are carried about to and fro in space, a body, whether alive or dead, will be vaporized and held in the bosom of the Mother, until Fohat, gathering a few of the clusters of cosmic matter, nebulae, will, by giving it an impulse, set it in motion anew, develop the required heat, and then leave it to follow its own new growth. The expanding and contracting of the web, that is, the world stuff, or atoms, expresses here the pulsatory movement, for it is the regular contraction and expansion of the infinite and shoreless ocean of that which we may call the noumenon of matter emanated by Svabhava, which causes the universal vibration of atoms. But it is also suggestive of something else. It shows that the ancients were acquainted with that which is now the puzzle of many scientists and especially of astronomers, the cause of the first ignition of matter or the world of stuff, the paradox of the heat produced by the refrigerative contraction and other such cosmic riddles. For it points unmistakably to a knowledge by the ancients of such phenomena. There is heat internal and heat external in every atom, say the manuscript commentaries, to which the writer has had access. The breath of the Father or Spirit and the breath or heat of the Mother, matter, and they give explanations which show that the modern theory of the extinction of the solar fires by loss of heat through radiation is erroneous. The assumption is false, even on the scientists' own admission, for as Professor Newcomb points out, in Popular Astronomy pages 506 to 508, by losing heat, a gaseous body contracts, and the heat generated by the contraction exceeds that which it had to lose in order to produce the contraction. This paradox, that the body gets hotter as the shrinking produced by its getting colder is greater, led to long disputes. The surplus of heat, it was argued, was lost by radiation, and to assume that the temperature is not lowered pari passu with a decrease of volume under a constant pressure is to set at naught the law of Charles, nebular theory, Winchell. Contraction develops heat, it is true, but contraction from cooling is incapable of developing the whole amount of heat at any time existing in the mass,
or even of maintaining a body at a constant temperature, etc. Professor Winchell tries to reconcile the paradox, only assuming one in fact, as Homer Lanes proved, by suggesting something besides heat. May it not be, he asks, simply a repulsion among the molecules, which varies according to some law of the distance? But even this will be found irreconcilable unless this something besides heat is ticketed causeless heat, the breath of fire, the all-creative force, plus absolute intelligence, which physical science is not likely to accept. However it may be, the reading of this stanza shows it, notwithstanding its archaic phraseology, to be more scientific than even modern science. Stanza 3 continued. 12. Then Svabhavat sends the forehead to harden the atoms. Each of these is a part of the web, the universe, reflecting the self-existent Lord, primeval light. Like a mirror, each becomes in turn a world. Note, this is said in the sense that the flame from a fire is endless, and that the lights of the whole universe could be lit at one simple rushlight without diminishing its flame. End of note. Fohat hardens the atoms, that is, by infusing energy into them. He scatters the atoms of primordial matter. He scatters himself while scattering matter into atoms. Manuscript commentaries. It is through Fohat that the ideas of the universal mind are impressed upon matter. Some faint idea of the nature of Fohat may be gathered from the appellation cosmic electricity sometimes applied to it, but to the commonly known properties of electricity must, in this case, be added others, including intelligence. It is of interest to note that modern science has come to the conclusion that all cerebration and brain activity are attended by electrical phenomena. For further details as to Fohat, see stanza 5 and comments. Next chapter is commentaries on stanza 4.